Oh, hello. I'm not sure how good I am for a long live tonight. My system's pretty upset with me. The joys of chronic inflammatory diseases. All right. Anyway, I have had a pretty great amount of fun playing around with this game design. So I'm actually really hopeful that I can maybe do something good. And I feel like, you know, it's possible to do a game that's good out the gate, a game that's good with alternative rules, a game that's good for expanding later on. So even if I don't get all the right stuff nailed down for expanding later on, I can always do a version 2.0 that has modified rule mechanics that enable expansion, or just create a whole new game similar but with alternate rules to enable that. So I think I'm gonna just have a like the also um sorry, my brain's a little all over the place right now. I was wondering, like, traditionally for something like this, I would maybe go to one of those print on demand game companies that I could set up a free storefront and sell a game at the front of. So you would order it, they'd print it and ship it to you, and I'm just a creator and designer who uses their services to create the games. It's sort of like a cafe press or a Teespring or whatever it is for the t-shirts. But instead of doing those things, you can create card or board games. That's one of the possibilities I thought about doing. If I'm definitely going the route with no dice and all the pieces would be something that you could potentially print out on like poster board or something like that, whatever you could run through your printer, um, or cardstock. Yeah, I might end up doing this as a digital file for people to download and print at home and make copies of this game. So I'm thinking maybe the selling as a digital file is the better way to go. Because I actually, part of the reason I say it that way is like I'm looking at some of the print on demand game sites that are out there, and it's like to get the box with the 50 cards in it and the tokens for the players, the board with the tiles for the individual corporations that you acquire. Here, each one of those is like $10 to $15 a piece to the kit added, and that quickly racks up the price for the game into the high double digits, close to triple digit price range if we're not careful, depending on how detailed and how complex we make the parts. And I was like, half the fun of this for me is creating a game. I want it to almost be like you pay $3 to $5 max for this game, and you get the chance to play it with friends. Like I don't want this to be you pay $50 to $80 for a game and uh, wait for it to be shipped to you and maybe play it with some friends. That that erects a barrier to entry for people that I don't want to make, especially for the fun I'm having with this. Come up with a game, create a prototype. I mean, I tried to get some playtesting done in the last day here, but seems like everybody's a little busy right now. Nobody's got really any time for this. Such is life. But I I feel like with the speed and simplicity of design and a little bit of the fun of just creating a game in a week, it's more fun if more people get the chance to try it out. And if people like it, maybe I'll make a few tweaks later on and make a higher end version of it that you can order from a game store. But I kind of like the idea of like a simple, cheap PDF that you can print out and playtest. And there are sites out there where I can do those types of sales, where I can sell you a digital file of all the parts and pieces you need, the cards, the tokens, the corporation tiles, the board. All of that could be done on maybe a 5 or 6 page, well, depending on how big I make the board, a 5 or 6 page PDF. If I make the board like a 4 tile big board and then 4 or 5 pages, like it could be a 10 page thing. I mean, I might even be able to print it out as a book through Amazon, but I don't want to even really do it that way. I'll have to take a look through and look at the sites I have as potential locations for creating things for sale. There's a site out there where you can do some of that stuff that's not like a traditional like, digital download for sale kind of websites. I could also potentially sell them as files on eBay, I think. I'm trying to remember some of the other. It's less common because I don't do a lot of stuff in the category of digital content sale. I'm not as much as I'm probably going to end up in a couple of months trying to create a piece of music and selling some music online just for the dabbling in it. I do not do that sort of thing often. And digital art, like art's a little bit different. Like a visual art, like a painting or a illustration, that's a little bit easier because you can sell prints of it. It's an image, not a text file. Like books, it's so weird. Like board game design is an aspect of like it creates a file that's hard to release for sale in a cheap way. Like I know I could produce a board game version of this for sale for $75 or above. Easily find a way to make that happen. $75 or below, that's harder to do. And maybe my game's worth that. I don't know. I don't usually purchase games that are above $25 a board game. So I can't tell you what the going rate of games are going at, but yeah, I find my best finds for board games right now in thrift stores because I'll find games that I've never heard of that are 40 or 50 years old and have quirky and interesting ways that they work for me to play with and explore and think about ways of expanding on them. Now, I have occasionally found a newer game, and I've also on occasion anteed up a little bit of cash for a newer game. But those games have to be something very, very special. Something that offers me a lot of value for what I get. A lot of replay and not some cheap gimmick remake of Operation or something like that. Um, so I'm thinking I may end up doing this as a digital file. It occurred to me just within the last 24 hours, and I went, that might make more sense because I kind of want you to be able to say, like, yeah, $3, I'll get a copy of the game and I can play it with my friends and we can talk about and like communicate on the inspired content comment section, or if I start a Discord channel at some point, if anybody's interested in that, um, then you could talk about the games and create your own mechanics for it, like alter it, come up with your own version of it. Switch it over from a cyberpunk story to I don't know, a urban fantasy, or unicorns versus griffins board game or something like that. I don't know. But it's possible to open it up for other people to really like. The thing about a game is you're supposed to play with it. I want you to play with oh jeez. Oh, I want you to play with the game and play with the ideas I create and share with you. And that's harder to do if there's a $50 to $80 barrier to entry to do that. I don't want to do it that way. Something like a board game, especially where it's meant to be played with. A book, a book is going to cost what it costs to print the book or the ebook version of it. Um, with the animation, I can kind of make that for free. Or, yeah, I mean, I want to make that for free. And I want to do with some of these things a little bit more along the lines of the shareware that I played when I was younger. You could go when the internet first started becoming a means of interacting with people all over the world and creating content and sharing it back and forth. There were companies, I guess we'd call them, that created some content, some of its games or apps for computers or whatever, and they'd bundle them into free game packets. You get 5 or 6 games or something like that, and the games would have a request at the end that if you like this game, pay $2 or $5 to the company. And like, I would rather do that, but I know these days that it's not the smartest business model. It doesn't get you very far. I don't know how I feel about that, but at any rate, maybe start a Patreon or something and make the game. No, I don't want to do that. Like, I keep coming across like, start a Patreon, and if you're a patron of the inspired content project, um, you get a copy of it. But that means some of you people who are just curious about this game and maybe want to play it, you have to join Patreon to do it. You know, I don't want to make you do that. I want you to voluntarily support and fund any projects that need funding at some point if I want to do them. But I also want you to be able to just enjoy it, come up with creative ideas, and make content without having to spend money to do it. So the animation I can probably do for free. The book, probably as cheaply as I can as a Kindle book, and a print book for a little more money if you want one. Make it an option to go upgrade or whatever. The board game, I think like a cheap downloadable for sale file and a better version later on, like a commercial version for those who are in, if there's enough interest to do a run. I might end up doing like a Kickstarter to fund a commercial run or something. I know a couple people who have done some. They they fund and run their own game design company, and the only thing I don't like about that is I have to get a storage unit just for the games. Order them in batches of 10,000. Put the kits together. Like, you order all the cards, you order all the boards, you order all the boxes, and you sort them, put them together into pieces together, and store them and fulfill the orders yourself. That's a little more complicated. But anyway, that's the boring part of today's episode. Let's have some fun with talking about the activity of creating this game. So, where I'm going with this sometime today is like the easy, simple way to play test a game like this is just to draw, the squares of motion and use them to create just a standard, like you get a piece of cardstock, the 8 by 12 or A1 uh, computer printer kind, only like a thick paper, like a cardstock, and then draw all the number of squares you need for your board on it. Draw the symbols where you need to land for certain events to happen. Get a bunch of index cards and write what your cards need to have on them. And use a bunch of coins as player tokens. It's like that's the simple format, the easy way to do this. And that lets you test out the mechanics of how you play. Now, I can do a test out version of this where like the tokens are these are the tokens, the boards are these are the this is the path you have to travel on, and these are the purchasables, and I can literally just say like purchasable 1, purchasable 2, purchasable 3, and so on, and you can make them color them red, green, or red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and there you've got 6 different colors. Each one of them, you have to get one of each color, and you're good to go. Like the theme, like you don't have to sit down with a bunch of people who are into hobbits and dwarves and elves and try to convince them that um, Klingons and uh, Vulcans and Romulans are more interesting ways to play a game. Like, I don't have to sell you on that. Sitting down with purchasables, action cards, hazard cards, player tokens, and a board. And if the gameplay works, that's a good sign. And then you can flesh it out with whatever flavor and story elements you want to do. So, with something like that in mind, I've got I kind of digitally pulled up an image here that I'm using as my board. And you can't see it, unfortunately, it doesn't help. But I've got, trying to remember here, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 71, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 80 squares is about what I went with. I may be off on that. I was aiming for roughly 100 in shape and ended up splitting a few smaller than others. Um, and joining a few together at different locations and reshaping some of them to be so I didn't have a lot of triangular pieces. Being able to lay it out in squares helps, especially if you make a single square sized piece and just map them multiple times out. Um, you know, I was freehanding it, so some of that overlap means that I got towards the end and it wasn't sized right to hold a whole square when I got the ends close together. I didn't make a perfect square either. I think I made rectangles. And yeah, it's like I think I did about 80. And the corner pieces were a little weird because I ended up doing angled, like irregular four-sided polygons. But yeah, I again, as is my habit of doing, I made things more difficult than they needed to be. Just seems to be my modus operandi for a lot of that. So about 80 squares. And I'm debating about with the board shape whether or not I want to do a like the artwork for the game. I kind of want to do a very kind of like user interface um, cityscape, but uh, like I really like a look at a city that's there's a somewhat famous way that I think it was a Japanese map maker used to do these bird's eye view maps where they look very much like the maps of like if you play a old Nintendo role playing game like Final Fantasy, the overworld map that you're traveling around on, um, where you've got like this city is this little icon here, and this city is this little icon here. As you're traveling around, there's a forest and there's a lake, and if you do that, it's just sort of like they're they're not straight on from the side, but they're not straight down from the top. They're sort of in at an angle, a bird's eye view of those cities and trees and lakes and whatnot. And then if you have another map like that where you map an entire city, again, it's always that like looking down into the city at about a 30-degree angle um, from the ground. So it's not over and it's not from the front. I love that style, but the problem with that is if you're playing a game with people all around the board, there is a distinctly like one person or two people for which that board is right, and everybody else is sideways or upside down. And I was like, I don't want to do it that way. And then there's like, do you want to do like a if you made it a two-player game, do it a like it's it's right from both sides of the board, but that makes the picture sort of like a you're looking in at like a V, uh, like a almost like a fisheye to the left side and a fisheye to the right side perspective, and like a center, like the road in the middle or something. And I don't really necessarily want to limit this to two players. And I also don't really want to have that overly distorted look, um, the fisheye effect on the board. So I find myself wondering, like, what's the best way to do this? Like artistically, there's a part of me that wants to do like a very, very stylistic, futuristic cityscape. But I don't know how I would do that and not limit it to one person has the right perspective. I mean, theoretically, I could set the whole game on a lazy Susan, and every player, when they take their turn, turns the board so that they're at the right point. But I mean, the other part of this is I'm supposed to be building a loop for players to travel around on and doing an otherwise very neat looking, you know, first person perspective cityscape doesn't doesn't lend itself to a loop of travel very well. A two-dimensional first-person look doesn't give you an easy loop. So, stylistically, how would be the best way to do this? The only thing I can think of is either just make the loop as if it's like a virtual path of travel, or and at the center do some still images like a painting of a futuristic city, or do a user interface satellite eye view satellite eye view of essentially a map of a future city. And I think that makes the most sense. Stylistically, it's less appealing to me, but I suppose there's some ways I can do some art on a few other pieces to help give it flavor, but don't require them to work mechanically for the game. So I think that's the way I'm going with that. But okay, so I've got the 80 square board that I'm going to do roughly in my path of chosen paths. And I kind of like the fact that if I do make a space for the megacorps that you can purchase or defeat and capture, um, that having along the outside a sort of a like a socket that the corpse plug into that you can acquire them from, and along the side of the location where they fit in, have a track for the corpsec. So if you're captured or voluntarily joined corpsec for access to the company, it's a path you have to travel that's off the main path. And I'm still not sure whether I want that to be large enough to loop all the way around, or if I want you to, like, if you get caught, maybe have you land in the middle and you can either go left or right on the path to get out, and both sides connect up to the other the main path. Um, I feel like CorpSec being CorpSec, the corporate security organizations really feel like our way or the highway, a one-way situation. And like if you're involuntarily dragged into CorpSec, the idea of escaping shouldn't be like, well, I can get out either of these two ways. It really should feel like you have to run the gauntlet to get out. And if you go in voluntarily, you realize that you're walking into a prison. Like you have voluntarily become a subject of this organization for the time that you were in there. You're free to leave because you're contracting freely with them. But that doesn't mean that you just go in, do whatever you want to do, and leave without feeling some sort of heavy restriction on you. I feel like the one path in and out is the way to really communicate that this isn't an easy, friendly visit that you're making. So, so I have the 80 squares, and then I feel like each area, like each of the sockets into which a company can go into, might have a different length of adjacent path for their corpsec. And so part of the appeal of that is also that like if you can put those megacorps at different locations at the start of different games, like sometimes corpsec for a telecom company might be one of the easiest ones to get in and out of. and so they're a light load. They're easier to deal with. But at another game, it may be one of the hardest ones to get, uh, and the bigger risk. And so it adds some variety to the game. So play isn't the same as it was each time. Oh man, my system's so angry. Hooray for chronic illness. Yay. Um, so that's some additional spaces. Now I keep referring to them as squares because that's the format I used for design testing. But I'm I'm thinking I'm definitely probably going to end up using a hexagonal tile set for that. I don't know why. There's just a part of my brain that equates to nesting hexagons as a sort of a very futuristic tile approach. Um, I briefly entertained the notion of making the whole board a hexagon, but I think I have a better design. Um, I'm thinking with the design that I'm going to do, it's still very geometric and angles and straight line kind of format. Um, but I want to build it in such a way that you can nestle a second board against the first board and make them look like an increasingly complex geometric form. The problem I'm having with that is if I build this first game as a closed loop on which you travel, if you nest the second board against it, or even three boards into a larger configuration, how do you do that and have the rings interconnect without having like a bridge between, like, without turning one ring into a figure eight, where you can come to an intersection and go any one of four ways? I don't think I want that. I want a single loop that you have to travel the whole way on. And like I feel like the only way that works is if in some way the board design is built so that it's not a closed loop for any one board, but there's a piece you can slide on the ends to close the end of a U. And if you want to do like two games, you just connect the two open-ended U's together. If you want to do three boards together, you set them at an angle, and like a tile that fits between two U's and a tile, like that would be a small rectangle with two bridges from open end, and open end. Um, but if you do, like, I can draw it. I'll draw it. This is so. There's a way I could do a path that's like this. Can you see it? Let's put it that way so it doesn't have other implications. Well, that doesn't help any either. So if I want to build a game so that it's a one, can I get that? I want to build a game so that's a one-player game. I build a a board for the first game that does essentially that, and have a bonus tile that closes the end of the loop here. And so if I want to do a game where two boards are strung together, you just have board 1 and board 2 with a conjoining tile that just bridges between those two U's. So, like that. And for a 3-player game, you would do something like this, or a 3-board game, I should say. And, it should be mentioned that if you do that, you're making a game that's going to play a lot longer than a single board game. And, that could be fun. If you build a game that's robust enough that people can sit around for 3 hours and play in a cyberpunk setting with like a 3-act structure. So like you could use a board like that with that triple bridge in the middle, um, and make your cityscapes. I think that offers a bit of versatility, and if I make the city structure map look good enough, yeah, I mean, I kind of like that. That seems like it would work. So an overhead map done as a U with the first game coming with an end piece that slots on that closes that U into a loop. And then, and I may not do as an actual U. I may just do it. That's, that's how the path will roughly travel. I may do a series of jagged street one-way turns and whatnot. Um, that seems like it could probably work pretty well. So that's roughly board design. Now, the cards, I feel like if I'm gonna do expansions, or the ability to combine box 1, act 1, with box 2, act 2, um, that having just the 50 card deck makes the most sense for gameplay now. Because if you add a second expand like an expansion board with, like, if you do a second board with a bridge and 25 extra cards, it should scale the game up sufficiently that you don't need to do like. But if you do like a what do we got, 10, 20, 30, 40, 6, 56. So if I did like 60, or no, if I did 75 cards for the base first game and add additional cards to um, subsequent expansions, it really quickly, grossly grows out of control. It's it become. I mean, the trick to that is 50 cards enough for movement and hack cards to be used without burning through the deck so fast that it's not enjoyable gameplay. And for that, I really need to play test. So I may see if I can get some people to help me out. It's not as easy as it sounds. getting people on like a couple days notice to say, hey, like, want to play test a game with me, which sucks because apparently, like, if I had planned this a little bit better, I could have come up with this game last week. And on Sunday was I hosted a playtest and game design group. um, we didn't have a lot of show up, so it wouldn't have made a lot of difference, but I could have at least gotten one play test through. But I hadn't even come up with the idea for this game yet. It was 2 days before I started this. 2 days? 3 days? What day is it? What day is today? I don't know where I am right now. All right. I know, well, I know where I am. I just don't know where I am on my calendar right now. Um, I have the cards that I need, like the function each card needs to have, and I've roughly based this off of a couple other game mechanics so that I know during, well, it's really more of a during a race style game, what kind of capabilities do you want each card to have, and how many of those cards do you want in the deck? I got a general sense of that. But yeah, if I'm using those cards also as the motion, which I feel like I need to do, use those cards for motion, use them for person to person conflict. So spoofing, denial of service, steal from a nearby character, steal from a specific character anywhere on the board, escape the corpse sack, defend yourself against attack, and draw another card. Those are your basic card formats for your positive cards, and then like the trouble cards, um, you're gonna want brick to reset, caught by corpse sack, network down, lose a turn, return an item to where you got it. So 4 categories, um, different numbers of each card, but roughly 30 good cards and 16 bad cards. That's sort of like what seems to work for their function. I don't know how well it works for cycling through them as a means of travel. So, like the value of move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 spaces. But that those would only apply to the. Ooh, that's definitely a thought. No, well, no, that's just an extra layer of complication. I was going to say, um, looking at this now, like the value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 motion uh, for cards, that's 7 types, 7 different values. And the hack positive cards, there are 7 different types of those. So that fits relatively nicely. I do not think that I know for sure that having, say, 2 cards with a draw 6, or yeah, 2 draw a card cards with a motion value of 6. I'm not sure if that makes more sense, or make it a motion value 4. I don't know which one we want to do more of. So I have to figure those out and get the balance on that right. And that's really just a matter of pull out my index cards and number them with a point value and label them with a hack or trouble value. I was going to say I could potentially make it so that if you're caught by corpse sec, The trouble value cards are reversed so that they're a positive value for you, but the good cards are a negative value for you. But that makes things more complicated than it needs to be. So I've roughly got the mechanics of all of that taken care of. The board size, design, and artwork style, I think roughly figured out here. But I still have to test out the numbers and make the math work out. Pretty sure I'm going to release this as a downloadable file for people to print and play test at home. Now comes the big question. When confronting your corporation, the mega corporation, mechanic-wise, for a board game, I like having uh, a currency system, a 2, 3, and 10-cent coin, essentially, that allows you to manage your income and your resources well enough to make sure you have the right money to buy the right companies when you encounter them. But story-wise, theme-wise, that's more of a business mogul buying companies. And like, even if I change the currency to botnets and individual bots, and you had to use them to acquire a company through hacking techniques, it's stretching the narrative a little, and it's still like, if you are a cyberpunk punk attempting to seize control and, you know, do illicit things to um, soulless mega corporations that dominate the landscape, it doesn't feel like it should be like secure enough of a resource that you need to spend in order to acquire that company for yourself. To me, with the narrative, it sounds like it should be more of a attack, risk getting attacked back, or failing because they defend themselves and you get caught and secured by CorpSec, or um, uh, expending energy, time, and effort to try to defeat the system of that mega corporation. And that is more of a combat system where you flip out your cards again and see if you can beat the corporation. So, say you have a theft card, pick the player versus a player nearby you. You have a pick a player card, and its value is roughly 5. You choose that you think that's good enough to take out this corporation. You lay it out, and the corporation is given a card from the deck as well, and you both flip those cards over, and the higher card value wins. Now, that's, oh, I don't know. That seems like it's always a lot bigger of a risk. There's a gamble aspect to that. Does it make more sense for the corporations to have a set point value and you have to just spend a card from your hand at a higher value rate? That might be a better way to go in the long run. I don't know. I'll have to build up my deck. But I do think um, story wise and theme wise for this type of game that having the currency system, as much as I would love to do little tokens with pictures of either Bitcoin or some other means of buying stuff, I just don't think there's room for it. I don't think that is what works for this game best. I think the cyber combat approach makes more sense. Do I want to do half and half of like the corporation has three attack but five defense? Oh, that makes it more complicated than it needs to be. Because then I have to worry about like how to handle a defense factor for the player character as well as pick like that's more complicated than it needs to be. I think really just landing on a corporation, picking a card value that should give you enough to defeat the corporation's system and acquire it for yourself. And like as much as that there's I still feel like, potential no, that works. That works. Because like I feel like knowing what you're up against when you go into a corporate fight a corporation to acquire it, um, it feels like it's more of buying it. There's no surprise factor. There's no gamble. It's not as big a risk. But there's also the possibility that at a given point, your highest card value is going to be 4. And in order to get this particular company, it's going to be 5 to get it. So you can't get it yet. You have to wait. You have to find a way to get more power to be able to make that attack. That works. And if we use that as a mechanic at a given point, um, the combat of player one versus player three at a certain point. If player three has a telecom and player one wants to get it from them, the player versus player aspect can be more of the, well, you don't know what card your opponent just put down. And so you put down yours, they put down theirs, and then you both flip, and whoever has the highest value wins. That that's a possibility. I I'll have to see how that works as play testing goes. And this is day 3, so I'm gonna have to find some people to do that with. Is it day 3 or is it day 4? I think it's day 3. I'm not sure. Been a long few days. So combat system, I think I'm moving away from the currency. As much as I would love the currency system to work, it just doesn't fit the theme of what I'm going for, I don't think. And I've got the 6 categories of megacorps to choose from. I may do the double up where like it's an energy slash transportation company and you need to acquire 3, but it'd be like 3 of you have to acquire enough to cover all 6 categories in what you acquire. Sometimes that may mean you have a transportation, telecom, an energy control, a finance telecom, and a retail transportation. So you have more than three you need to acquire to meet the end goal. That's not a bad way to go. Kind of like that. That's a pretty, yeah, I think I'm nailing down all the little pieces I need for this. Now I really just need to playtest the combat system, figure out the value of motion and attack of each card, and whether or not they're the same thing. That's true. And I think total 50 cards should be enough. Um, so 50 cards, one one big U-shaped board with an end cap to make a circle, a loop. Um, cards, tokens for players, and tiles for corporations. And that's really all you would need. Like that deck of cards, the tiles for corporations, playing pieces could be coins if you really wanted it to be, and then the cityscape. And then like an expansion pack would be a second board with a bridge and a new set of corporation tiles, maybe some additional player pieces, and a bonus deck of 25 cards, maybe 15 additional cards to expand the deck a little bit. Maybe throw in a few extra new mechanics if I figure any out. And then like an additional bonus would be like the triple board bridge. So another board with another bridge. Um, and oh, you could do some weird things by combining those bridges in new ways. Like that, the first game has a small half circle to close the end of the loop. The second game has a rectangle with two straight lines on it. And the third board has a triangle with three corner loops, essentially. But if you use the three corner loop with the two straight lines on one of the ends, and then the little half loop from the first game, you could really build a convoluted map where you could have as many as like nine players all competing or in teams doing. Oh wow, this could be epic if I make sure to build the rules robust enough to allow. And that's the other thing is, uh, with the rules, I have to figure out a way to make a cooperative play, a betrayal play, and a competitive play. And with enough people in a big enough city, you could have all three of them happening in small clusters at any given time. That would be so, like, I kind of want to see that game happen. I'm going to love doing this. And I'm half excited to see other people try this game and tell me ideas they have for doing something like house rules. Tell me what you got. Like, I want this to exist now. I don't want to have to put the next 3 days, 4 days of work into this. I want it to be here now. I am loving this. Alrighty, so where are we at with this? I am probably rambling. Oh, yep, we're almost at an hour now. Wow, this one's really doing the timeline for me. This may be the one I enjoy doing most. I will probably do more of these. I'm surprised because I would have said it would be the book writing. because I love coming up with stories. And it may be like that next time I do a story, right? Or if I next time I do a video in a week, doing something live action would be easier than the animation. So I might, just come up with scripts, create one, and share it with people, and that might be just as much fun. I might end up doing these hour and 20 minute, hour and a half long live posts as I work things out and figure stuff out. I'd love to do this as like a collab with somebody at some point too, where we sit down and it's like, okay, you and I are going to come up with a board game in the next, you know, week. We're going to sit down here and hash out back and forth brainstorming sessions and simple artwork, play test it together, and then that would be amazing. Or scripting a series, a short series of videos, or writing a book. Like, I want to do stuff like that. This is fun. This is why I want to do this. Not only do we create fun things to do with other people later, but it's fun to create them. God, that heater's really pumping tonight. All right, so that's sort of where I am right now. I have to test the numbers. I wonder if I do the attack value versus the motion value, do the cards have the same value? Like, if you have card Escape Corpsec, is its attack value 7 and its movement value 7? Or is it, attack value 5 and movement value 6? Do I give a separate value to each potential use of those cards? I'll have to keep that as like the area to start in my frame of reference because, um, like, I think having that be an option makes it easier to frame what the values are for given cards, so that it doesn't disrupt the mechanics. So it's something you have to really fine tune. You don't want somebody to be grossly overpowered or underpowered in the combat department, but moving around the board like lightning or dragging their heels as they move. Like, you really don't want to compromise one aspect of gameplay for another gameplay by making both dependent on a single numerical value. Um, like, you can do it. You can build the game so that that's the way they function, but that takes a lot of testing every card in a lot of scenarios to make sure you get all of it right, the perfect right balance. And some of that may be something simple as like a third of your spoofing cards are low value, and a third are a middle value, and a third are high value for motion. And half of them are high value for attack, and half of them are low value for attack. Like, that's like tuning those correctly. And like, what does that mean for the deck later? Like, as you add expansions, does like adding two more spoof cards with the next expansion deck thoroughly unbalance some of that stuff? And like, what are the values for attack and motion on those future cards? Are they like, now from now on they're all the same, or do you just chunk in a few? Like, I don't want to do I don't want to do a set of cards that's like a Magic the Gathering card set where you have three different numerical values on each card, and how somebody plays them against another card of a similar suit or an opposing suit. Like, I really don't want to build the deck like that. I don't want this to be a deck building game. So I really think like potentially having the attack value and the motion value be separate, but for each one of those types of cards, they're always going to have those same values. Finding the right value for them right now, I think just comes down to a couple rounds of gameplay. And once I do that, I think that's all the pieces of this game that I need to get in place. Then it's just down to design and artwork, and then formatting the file for upload and download. Yeah, I think we're almost there. Really becomes a matter of artwork. And I may adjust how many squares per board I do. Um, like the 80 may make a long path, or maybe a short path, depending on how motion goes in this game. Really comes down to playing a game or two with somebody to just get a feel for it. All right, yeah, I'm still rambling, and we're at an hour and 10 minutes almost. So, well, it's an hour and 7 minutes at this point. I should probably call it here. Thanks for joining me in my crazy rabid excitement about this. See you tomorrow, I guess.